ओके, चलिए शुरू करते हैं। आई होप मेरा आवाज़ क्लियर आ रहा है और करते हैं। यस, तो आज का हमारा टास्क इतना है। अभी मैं आपको कोई भी आज का ये है कि आर्टिकल्स ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन 1 से लेके 395 जितने भी आर्टिकल्स हैं, सारे आर्टिकल्स वो हम लोग डिस्कस करने वाले हैं। डिस्कस तो नहीं बोलेंगे, मतलब मैं आपसे एक्सपेक्ट कर रही हूँ टू टेक दिस एज अ रिविजन सेशन कि आपको आपको सारे आर्टिकल्स समझ तो आ ही गए हैं कि किस में क्या क्या है, बट एक बार हम इसको गो थ्रू कर लेते हैं, बिकॉज रिविजन छूट जाता है तो सब कुछ छूट जाता है। तो रिवीजन के लिए हम सारे आर्टिकल्स एक बार पढ़ेंगे। इसको हम स्टेज बाय स्टेज इम्प्रूव करते जाएंगे कि हम कैसे रिवाइज करेंगे। उसकी स्ट्रैटेजी भी मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूंगी कि स्टेज बाय स्टेज हम कैसे जो हमारा रिवीजन है उसको रिफाइन करेंगे। अभी आई एम कंसिडरिंग कि वो जो लोग इसको सुन रहे हैं अभी, वो उन्होंने एक बार सारे आर्टिकल्स पढ़ लिए हैं। थोड़ा बहुत उन्होंने लक्ष्मीकांत के चैप्टर्स पढ़ लिए हैं, मतलब थोड़ा बहुत उनको अगर लक्ष्मीकांत के चैप्टर्स के बारे में आइडिया, पार्ट ऑफ दिस उनको सारे आर्टिकल्स के बारे में थोड़ा आइडिया है। ठीक है, अब उसको रिवीजन करने का बारी आ गया है। और इसको मान के चलते हैं कि आपने कल ही सारे आर्टिकल्स पूरे अच्छे तरीके से पढ़े और आज आप रिवीजन सेशन में आ गए हो कि हर रोज अभी एक दिन का रिवीजन, उसके बाद ऐसे गैप गैप करके हमें रिवाइज तो करते ही रहना। सो लेट अस स्टार्ट। आर्टिकल्स ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फ्रॉम 1 to 395। पार्ट 1, यूनियन एंड इट्स टेरिटरी। नेम एंड इट्स टेरिटरी ऑफ द यूनियन। मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर देती हूँ, जितना फास्ट फास्ट हो जाए नहीं, आज एक्चुअली एक्सप्लेन नहीं करते हैं। आज सिर्फ एक रीडिंग करते हैं, नेक्स्ट में आपको मैं ब्रीफली एक्सप्लेन भी करती जाऊंगी, ठीक है। क्योंकि ये पहला हमारा रिवीजन है, तो एक बार ऐसा करते हैं, बस एक बार गो थ्रू कर लेते हैं बिना रुके, ठीक है। और थोड़ी टाइम में आपको जल्दी से वो वीडियो भी एक्सप्लेन कर दूंगी जिसमें हम फटाफट सारे विथ लिटिल बिट ऑफ एक्सप्लेनेशन एज वेल इसको सारे आर्टिकल्स को कवर करेंगे। सो लेट अस स्टार्ट। पार्ट 1, यूनियन एंड इट्स टेरिटरी। नेम एंड टेरिटरी ऑफ द यूनियन। एडमिशन और स्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ न्यू स्टेट्स। अच्छा, आर्टिकल्स के नंबर भी मैं आपको बोलते जाऊंगी, ठीक है। 1, नेम एंड टेरिटरी ऑफ द यूनियन। 2, एडमिशन और स्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ न्यू स्टेट्स। 2A, सिक्किम टू बी एसोसिएटेड with the union that was repealed. 3, formation of a new state and alteration of areas, boundaries, and name of existing states. 4, law made under Article 2 and 3 to provide for the amendment of the first and the fourth schedule and supplemental, incidental, and consequential matters. Citizenship, that is Part 2. 5, citizenship at the commencement of the Constitution. 6, right of citizen of the certain person who have migrated to India from Pakistan. 7, India rights of its citizens of certain migrants to Pakistan. 8, right of citizenship of certain persons to Indian origin residing outside India. 9, person voluntarily acquiring citizenship of a foreign state not to be citizen. 10, continuance of the right of citizenship. 11, parliament to regulate the right of citizenship by law. Part 3, fundamental rights. 12, definition of state. 13, law inconsistent with or in derogation of the fundamental rights. 14, equality before law. 15, prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. 16, equality of opportunity in the matters of public employment. 17, abolition of untouchability. 18, abolition of titles. 19, protection of certain rights regarding freedom of speech, etc. 20, protection in respect to conviction of offense. 21, protection of life and personal liberty. 21A, right to elementary education. 22, protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. 23, prohibition of traffic in human being and forced labor. 24, prohibition of employment of children in factories, etc. 25, freedom of conscience and free propagation profession and free profession, practice, and propagation of religion. 26, freedom to manage religious affairs. 27, freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. 28, freedom as to attendance at religious instruction or religious worship in certain educational institution. 29, protection of interest of minorities. 30, rights of minorities to establish and administer educational institution. 31. Compulsory acquisition of property. That was repealed. 31A. Let us not discuss 31A and all because 31 is repealed, so let's not go into deep. Okay. Then 32. Remedies for enforcement of fundamental rights including writs. In 32A, constitutional validity of state laws not to be considered in proceeding under Article 32, repealed. 33. Power of Parliament to modify the fundamental rights of the application to forces, etc. 34. Restriction of fundamental rights while martial law is in force in any area. 35. Legislation to give effect to some of the provisions of fundamental rights. Fourth, Fourth part, directive principle of state policy. 36. Definition of states. 37. Application of directive principle. 38. State to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of the people. 39. Certain principles of policy to be followed by the state. 39A. Equal justice and free legal aid. 40. Organization of village panchayat. 41. Right to work, to education, and to public assistance in certain cases. 42. Provisions of just and humane condition of work and maternity relief. 43. Living wage, etc. for worker. 43A. Participation of workers in management of industries. 43B. Promotion of cooperative society. 44. Uniform civil code for the citizens. 45. Provision of early childhood care and education to children below the age of 6 years. 46. Promotion of education and economic interest of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other weaker sections. 47. Duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. 48. Organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. 48 ka A. 48A. Protection and improvement of environment and safeguarding forest and wildlife. 49. Protection of monuments and places and objects of national importance. 50. Separation of judiciary from executive. 51. Promotion of international peace and security. Fourth A. It means part 4, 4A. Fundamental duties. 51A. Fundamental duties. Part 5. President and Vice President. 52. The President of India. 53. Executive power of the Union. 54. Election of President. 55. Manner of election of President. 56. Terms of the office of President. 57. Eligibility of re-election. 58. Qualification of election as President. 59. Condition of President's office. 60. Oath or affirmation by the President. 61. Procedure for impeachment of the President. 62. Time of holding election to fill vacancy in the order to President and the term of office of person elected to fill casual vacancy. 63. The Vice President of India. 64. The Vice President to be ex officio Chairman of the Council of States. 65. The Vice President to act as President or to discharge the function during the casual vacancies in the office or during the absence of President. 66. Election of Vice President. 67. Terms of office of Vice President. 68. Time of holding election to fill vacancy in the office of Vice President and the term of the office of the person elected to fill casual vacancy. 69. Oath or affirmation by the Vice President. 70. Discharge of President function in other contingencies. 71. Matters relating to or connected with or election of the President or Vice President. 72. Power of President to grant pardon, etc., and to suspend, remit, and commute sentence in certain cases. 73. Extent of executive power of the Union. Then, Union Ministers and Attorney General. This is also part of Part 5. 74. Council of Ministers to aid and advise President. 75. 74. Council of Ministers to aid and advise President. 75. Other provisions as to ministers. 76. Attorney General of India. 77. Conduct of business of the Government of India. 78. Duties of Prime Minister as respect the furnishing of information to the President, etc. Then Parliament, part of Part 5. 79. Constitution of Parliament. 80. Composition of the Council of States. 81. Composition of the House of the People. 82. Readjustment after each census. 83. Duration of House of Parliament. 84. Qualification of membership of Parliament. 85. Sessions of Parliament, prorogation and dissolution. 86. Right of President to address and send message to Houses. 87. Special address by the President. 88. Rights of Ministers and Attorney General as respect Houses. 89. The Chairman and Deputy Chairman of the Council of States. 90. Vacation and resignation of or removal from the office of Deputy Chairman. 91. Power of Deputy Chairman or other persons to perform the duties of the office of or to act as Chairman. 92. The Chairman or the Deputy Chairman not to preside while the resolution of his removal from the office is under consideration. 93. The Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the House of the People. 94. Vacation and resignation of and removal from the office of Speaker and Deputy Speaker. 95. Power of the Deputy Speaker and other persons to perform the duties of the office of or to act as Speaker. 96. The Speaker or the Deputy Speaker not to preside while the resolution of his removal from the office is under consideration. 97. Salaries and allowances of the Chairman and Deputy Chairman and the Speaker and Deputy Speaker. 98. Secretariat of Parliament. 99. Oath or affirmation by members. 100. Voting in houses. Power of houses to act notwithstanding vacancies and quorum. 101. Vacation of seats. 102. Disqualification of members. 103. Decision on questions as to disqualification of members. 104. Penalty for sitting and voting before making oath and affirmation under Article 99 or when not qualified or when disqualified. 105. Powers, privileges, etc. of the Houses of Parliament and of the members of committee thereof. 106. Salaries and allowances of members. 107. Provision as the introduction of passing of bills. 108. Joint sitting of both houses in certain cases. 109. Special procedure in respect of money bill. 110. Definition of money bill. 111. Assent to bills. 112. Annual national statement, that is budget. 113. Procedure in Parliament with respect to estimates. 114. Appropriation of bills. 115. Supplementary, additional and excess grants. 116. Votes on account, votes of credit and exceptional grants. 117. Special provision as to financial bills. 118. Rules of procedure. 119. Regulation by law of procedure in Parliament in relation to financial businesses. 120. Languages to be used in Parliament. 121. Restriction on discussion in Parliament. 122. Uh, Courts not to inquire into proceedings of parliaments. 123. Power of President to promulgate ordinances during recess of Parliament. Supreme Court, part of Part 5. 124. Establishment and Constitution of Supreme Court. 124A. A National Judicial Appointment Commission. 124B. Functions of Commission. 124C. Power of Parliament to make law. 125. Salaries etc. of judges. 126. Appointment of acting Chief Justice. 127. Appointment of ad hoc judges. 128. Attendance of retired judges at sitting of the Supreme Court. 129. Supreme Court to be a court of record. 130. Seat of Supreme Court. 131. Original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. 131A. Exclusive jurisdiction of Supreme Court in regard to questions as to the constitutional validity of central law, that is repealed. 132. Appellate jurisdiction of Supreme Court in appeals from High Court in certain cases. 133. Appellate jurisdiction of Supreme Court in appeals from High Court in regard to civil matters. 134. Appellate jurisdiction of Supreme Court in regard to criminal matters. 134A. Certificate of appeal to the Supreme Court. Certificate for appeal to the Supreme Court. 135. Jurisdictions and powers of the federal court under existing law to be exercisable by the Supreme Court. 136. Special leave to appeal by the Supreme Court. 137. Review of judgment or order by the Supreme Court. 138. Enlargement of the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. 139. Conferment of the Supreme Court of power to issue certain writs. 139A. Transfer of certain cases. 140. Ancillary power of Supreme Court. 141. Law declared by Supreme Court to be binding on all courts. 142. Enforcement of decree or enforcement of decree and orders of Supreme Court and order as to discovery, etc. 143. Power of President to consult Supreme Court. 144. Civil and judicial authorities to act in aid of the Supreme Court. 144A. Special provisions as to disposal of questions relating to constitutional validity of law repealed. 145. Rules of court, etc. 146. Officers and servants and the expenses of the Supreme Court. 147. Interpretation. Then Comptroller and Auditor General of India, part of Part 5. 148. Comptroller and Auditor General of India. 149. Duties and power of Comptroller and Auditor General. 150. Form of accounts of the Union and of the states. 151. Audit reports. Then Governor, Part 6. 152. Definition of states. 153. Governor of states. 154. Executive power of state. 155. Appointment of governor. 156. Term and office of governor. 157. Qualification for appointment as governor. 158. Conditions of governor's office. 159. Oath and affirmation by the governor. 160. Discharge of the functions of governors in certain contingencies. 161. Power of governor to grant pardon, etc., and to suspend, remit, and commute sentences in certain cases. 162. Extent of executive power of states. Then state ministers and advocate general, part of Part 6. 163. Council of Ministers to aid and advise governor. 164. Other provisions as to minister. 165. Advocate General of the state. 166. Conduct of business of the government of the state. 167. Duties of chief minister as respect the furnishing of information to governor, etc. Then state legislature, part of Part 6. 168. Constitution of legislature in states. 169. Abolition or creation of legislative council in states. 170. Composition of the legislative assemblies. 171. Composition of legislative councils. 172. Duration of state legislature. 173. Qualification for membership of the state legislature. 174. Sessions of the state legislature, prorogation and dissolution. 175. Right of governor to address and send message to the House of Houses. 176. Special address by the governor. 177. Right of ministers and advocate general in respect to houses. 178. The speaker and deputy speaker of the legislative assembly. 179. Vacation and resignation of and removal from the office of speaker and deputy speaker. Office of speaker and deputy speaker. 180. Power of deputy speaker or other person to perform the duties of the office of or to act as speaker. 181. The speaker or the duty of deputy speaker. 181. The speaker or the deputy speaker not to preside while a resolution from his removal from office is under consideration. 182. The chairman and deputy chairman of the legislative council. 183. Vacation and resignation of and removal from the office of chairman and deputy chairman. 184. Power of the deputy chairman or the other person to perform the duties of the office of or to act as chairman. 185. The chairman of and the deputy chairman not to preside while a resolution from his office or office is under consideration. 186. Salaries and allowances of the speaker and deputy speaker and the chairman and deputy chairman. 187. Secretariat of state legislature. 188. Oath or affirmation of members. 189. Voting in houses. Voting in House, power of Houses to act notwithstanding vacancies and quorum. 190. Vacation of seats. 191. Disqualification of membership. 192. Decisions on questions as to disqualification of members. 193. Penalty for sitting and voting before making oath or affirmation under Article 188 or when not qualified or when disqualified. 194. Power, privileges, etc. of the House of the Legislature and of the members of the committee thereof. 195. Salaries and allowances of members. 196. Provisions as to introduction and passing of bill. 197. Restriction on powers of Legislative Council and to bills other than money bill. 198. Special procedure. Uh, 197 हो गया ना restriction on powers of legislative council as to bill as to bills other than money bill. 198 special procedure in respect of money bill. 199 definition of money bills. 200 assent to bills. 201 bills reserved for consideration of the president. 102 annual financial statement budget. 203 Procedure of Legislature with respect to estimates. 204 Appropriation Bill. 205 Supplementary, Additional and Excess Grant. Uh, 206 Vote on account, vote of credit and exceptional grants. 207 Special provision as to financial bills. 208 Rules of procedure. 209 Regulation by law of procedure in the legislature of the states in relation to financial business. 210 Language to be used in the legislature. 211 on discussion restriction on discussion in the legislature. 212 Courts not to inquire into proceedings of the legislature. 213 Power of governor and promulgate ordinance during recess of legislature. Then High Court, part of Part 6. 214 High Courts of States. 215 High Courts to be the courts of record. uh, 216 Constitution of High Court. 217 Appointment and conditions of the offices of the Judge of the High Court. 218 Application of certain provisions relating to Supreme Court or to High Courts. 219 Oath and affirmation of judges of High Court. 220 Restriction on practice after being a permanent judge. 221 Salaries etc. of judges. 222 Transfer of a judge from one high court to another. 223 Appointment of acting chief justice. 214 Appointment of additional and acting judges. 224 A. Appointment of retired judges at sitting of High Court. 225 Jurisdiction of existing High Court. 226 Power of High Court to issue certain writs. 226A. Constitutional validity of central laws not to be considered in proceedings under Article 226 repealed. 227 Power of superintendence over all courts by the High Court. 228 Transfer of certain cases to High Court. 228A Special provision as to disposal of questions relating to constitutional validity of state laws repealed. 229 Officers and servants and the expenses of High Court. 230 Extension of the jurisdiction of High Court to Union territories. 231 Establishment of the Common High Court for two or more states. Then 232 Interpretation repealed. Subordinate Court. Subordinate Court, part of Part 6. 233 Appointment of district judges. 233A Validation of appointments of and judgments etc. delivered by certain district judges. 234 Recruitment of persons other than district judges to the judicial service. 235 Control over subordinate courts. 236 Interpretation. 237 Application of the provision of this chapter to certain classes or classes of magistrate. Then part 7, states in part B of the first schedule repealed. So part 7 is repealed too, but the article was 238, application of provision of part 6 to states and part B of the first schedule. Okay. So initially it was, states were divided in part A and part 2, part A and part B, like that. So it is repealed. Now part 8. Uh, Part 7 is repealed, now part 8. Union Territories. 239, Administration of Union Territories. 239A, Creation of Local Legislature or Council of Ministers in both of the certain Union Territories. 239AA, Special Provision with respect to Delhi. 239AB, Provisions in case of failure of constitutional machinery. 239B, Power of Administrator to promulgate ordinance during recess of legislature. Then 240, power of president to make regulation of certain union territories. 241, high courts for union territories. 242, Kurg repealed. Now part 9, panchayats. 243, definition. 243A, gram sabha. 243B, constitution of panchayat. 243C, composition of panchayat. 243D, reservation of seats. 243E, duration of panchayat, etc. 243F, disqualification of membership. 243G, power, authority and responsibility of panchayats. 243H, power to impose taxes by and funds of the panchayat. 243I, constitution of finance commission to review financial position. 243J, audit of account of panchayat. 243K, election of the panchayats. 243L, application of union territories. 243M, part not to apply on certain areas. 243N, continuance of existing law and panchayat. 243O, bar to interfere by courts in electoral matters. Then part 9A, municipalities. 243P, definition. 243Q, constitution of municipalities. 243R, composition of municipalities. Okay, you got it. 243Q is constitution of municipalities and 243R is composition of municipalities. 243S, constitution and composition of wards, committees, etc. 243T, reservation of seats. 243U, duration of municipalities, etc. 243V, disqualification of memberships. 243W, power of authority and responsibilities of municipalities. 243X, power to impose taxes and the funds of the municipalities. 243Y, finance commission. 243Z, audit of account of municipalities. 243ZA, election of the municipality. 243ZB, application to union territories. 243ZC, part not to apply to certain areas. 243ZD, committee of district planning. 243ZE, committee for metropolitan planning. 243ZF, continuance of existing law and municipalities. 243ZG, bar to interfere by courts in electoral matters. Then 9B, cooperative societies, part of part 9B. 243ZH, definition. 243ZI, incorporation of cooperative society. 243ZJ, number and term of members of board and its office bearer. 243ZK, election of members of board. 243ZL, supersession and suspension of board and interim management. 243 ZM, audit of account and cooperative societies. 243 ZN, conveying the general body meeting. 243 uh, 243 ZO, right of a member to get information. 243 ZP, returns. 243 ZQ, offenses and penalties. 243 ZR, application to multi-state cooperative societies. 243 ZS, application to union territories, and 243 ZT, continuance of existing law. Part 10, scheduled and tribal areas, part of part 10. 244 Administration of Scheduled Areas and Tribal Areas. 244A Formation of an autonomous state comprising certain tribal areas in Assam and creation of local legislature or council of ministers or both, therefore. Part 11 Center State Legislative relation. Part of Part 11 Center State Legislative Relations. 245 Extent of laws made by Parliament and by the legislature of states. 246 Subject matter of laws made by the Parliament and by the legislature of states. 246A Special provision with respect to goods and service tax. 247 Power of Parliament to provide for the establishment of certain additional codes. 248 Residuary power of legislation. 249 Power of Parliament to legislate with respect of a matter of a state list in the national interest. 250 Power of the Parliament to legislate with the respect of any matter in the state list if the proclamation of emergency is in operation. 251 Inconsistency between laws made by the Parliament under Article 249 and 250 and laws made by the legislature of states. 252 Power of Parliament to legislate for two or more states by consent and adoption of such legislature by any other state. 253 Legislation for giving effect to international agreement. 254 Inconsistency between laws made by Parliament and laws made by the legislature of states. 255 Requirement as to recommendation of previous sanction to be regarded as matter of procedure only. Center State Administrative Relation. This is part of Part 11. 256 Obligation of states and the Union. 257 Control of the Union over states in certain cases. 257A Assistance of the states by deployment of armed forces or other forces of the Union repealed. 258 Power of the Union to confer powers etc. on states in certain cases. 258A Power of the state to entrust functions to the Union. 259 Armed forces in states in Part B of the first schedule repealed. 260 Jurisdiction of the Union of relation in relation to territories outside India. 261 Public Act Record and Judicial Proceedings. 262 uh, Adjudication Adjudication of disputes relating to water of interstate river or water river valleys. 263 Provision with respect to an interstate council. Now part 12 Center State Financial Relation. 264 Interpretation. 267 Taxes not to be imposed saved by the authorities of law. 266 Consolidated funds of public account of India and of the states. 267 Contingency fund. 268 Duties levied by the union by but collected the appropriated by the states. 268A Service tax levied by union and collected by the appropriation of union and the states repealed. 269 Tax levied by the collection of the union but assigned to the states. 269A Levy and collection of goods and service tax in course of interstate trade or commerce. 270 Tax levied and distributed between the Union of States. Surcharges of certain duties and taxes for purpose of Union. 272 Taxes which are levied and collected by the Union and may be distributed between Union and the states. Repealed. 273 Grant in lieu or to export duty on jute and jute products. 274 Prior recommendation by President required for to bill affecting taxation in which states are interested. 275 Grants from the Union to certain states. 276 Taxes on profession, trade, calling and employment. 277 Saving. 278 Agreement with state of Part B of the first schedule with regard to certain financial matter repealed. 279 Calculation of the net proceeds of proceeds etc. Calculation of net proceeds and etc. 279A Goods and Service Tax Council. 280 Finance Commission. 281 Recommendation of the Finance Commission. 282 Expenditure defrayed by the Union. or a state out of its revenue. 283 custody etc or consolidated fund contingency fund and money credited to the public account. 284 custody of suitor custody of suitor deposits and other money received by public servant and courts. 285 exemption of property of the union from the state taxation. 286 restriction as to imposition of tax on the sale or purchase of goods. 287 exemption from taxes of on electricity. 288 exemption from taxes by state in respect of water or electricity in certain cases. 289 exemption of property and income of the state from union taxation. 290 adjustment in respect to certain expenses and pensions. 290A annual payment and certain devasum funds. 291 uh, privy purse privy purse sums of ruler repealed. 292 borrowing of the government of India. 293 borrowing by the states. Then rights and liabilities of the government, part of part 4. 294 succession to property, assets, rights, liabilities, and obligations in certain cases. 295 succession to property, asset, rights, liabilities, and obligation in other cases. 296 property occurring by escheat or lapse of buna vacantia. 297 things of value within territorial waters or continental shelf and resources of the exclusive economic zone to west in the union. 298 power to carry on trade etc. 299 contracts. 300 suits and proceedings. Right to property. 300 a persons not to be deprived of property saved by authority of law. Then part 13 trade, commerce, and intercourse. 301 freedom of trade, commerce, and intercourse. 302 power of parliament to impose restriction on trade, commerce, and intercourse. 303 restriction on the legislative power of the union and of the states with regard to trade and commerce. 304 restriction on trade, commerce, and intercourse among states. 305 saving of existing law and law providing for states monopoly. 306 power of certain state in part B of the first schedule to impose restriction on trade and commerce repeal. 307 appointment of the authority of carrying out the purpose of article 301 to 304. Then part 14 public services. 308 interpretation. 309 recruitment and conditions of services of the person serving the union of or a state. 310 tenure of the office of person serving the union of the state. 311 dismissal, removal, and reduction in the rank of persons employed in civil capacities under the union of the union or a state. 312 All India Services. 312A Power of the Parliament to vary or revoke conditions of services of officers of certain services. 313 Transitional Provisions. 314 Provision of protection of existing officers of certain services repealed. Public Service Commission. Part 14. Uh, Public Service 315 Public Service Commission for the Union and of for the states. 316 Appointment and terms of office of members. 317 Removal and suspension of the members of Public Service Commission. 318 Power to make regulation as to condition of service of members and staff of the Commission. 319 Prohibition as to the holding of offices by the member of the Commission on ceasing to be such members. 320 Functions of Public Services Commission. 321 Power to extend functions of Public Service Commission. 322 Expenses of Public Service Commission. 323 Reports of Public Service Commission. Now 14A Tribunals. 323A Administrative Tribunals. 323B Tribunals for other matters. Then part 15 Elections. 324 Superintendence direction and control of election to be vested in the election commission. 325 no person can be ineligible for inclusion in or to claim to be included in such special electoral roll on ground of religion, race, caste, or sex. 326 election of the House of the People and election of the House of the People and to the legislative assemblies of the state to be on the basis of adult suffrage. 327 Power of the Parliament to make provisions with respect to election of legislature. 328 Power of legislation of the state to make provision with respect to election to such legislature. 329 Bar to interfere by courts in electoral matters. 329A Special provision as the election to parliament in the case of prime minister and speaker repealed. Part 16 Special provision relating to certain classes. 330 Reservation of seats of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the House of the People. 331 Representation of Anglo-Indian community in the House of People. 332 Reservation of seats for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in the Legislative Assembly of the States. 333 Representation of Anglo-Indians community in the Legislative Assemblies of the States. 334 Reservation of seats and special representation to cease after 70 years. 335 Claim of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to receive and uh, tribes to services and post. 336 Special provision or Anglo-Indian community to certain services. 337 Special provision with respect to educational grants for the benefit of Anglo-Indian community. 338 National Commission of the Scheduled Caste. 338A National Commission of Scheduled Tribes. 338B National Commission for Backward Classes. 339 Control of the Union over the administration of the scheduled areas and the welfare of scheduled tribes. 340 Appointment of the Commission of the Investment and Condition of Backward Classes. 340 Appointment of the Commission of to investigate the condition of backward classes. 341 Scheduled caste. 342 Scheduled tribes. 343 342A Socially and educationally backward classes. Now, Part 17. 343 Official language of Union. 344 Commission of and Committee of the Parliament of Official Language. 345 Official language and languages of the state. 346 Official language for communication between one state to another or between state and the union. 347 Special provision relating to language spoken by the section of the population of the state. 348 Languages to be used in the Supreme Court or in the High Court for the acts, bills, etc. 349 Special procedure for enactment of certain laws relating to languages. 350 Languages to be used as in representation of redress of grievance. 350A Facilities for instruction in the mother tongue of primary stage. 350B Special officers of linguistic minorities. 351 Directive of the for development of the Hindi language. Part 18 Emergency provisions. 352 Proclamation of emergency, national emergency. 353 of proclamation of emergency. 354 application of provision of relating to distribution of revenue while the proclamation of emergency is in operation. 355 duty of the union to protect states against external aggression and internal disturbance. uh, 356 Provision in case of failure of constitutional machinery in states, president rule. 357 Exercise of legislative power under proclamation issues under Article 356. 358 Suspension of the provisions of Article 19 during emergency. 359 Suspension of enforcement of fundamental rights during emergencies. 359A Application of the part of the states of Punjab repeal. 360 Provision of the financial emergency. Part 19 Miscellaneous provisions. 361 Protection of President and Governor and Raj Pramukh. 361A Protection of the publication of proceedings of Parliament and State Legislature. 361B Disqualification of appointment of remuneration political post. 362 Rights and privileges of rulers of Indian states repealed. 363 Bar to interfere by the court in disputes arising in the certain treaties, agreements, etc. 363A Recognition granted to rulers of Indian states to seize and uh, privy purses to the abolished. 364 Special provision as the major port and aerodromes. Special provisions to as to major ports and aerodromes. 365 Effect of failure of comply with or to give effect to direction given by the union president rule. 366 definitions. 367 interpretation. 20 Part 20 Amendment of the Constitution. 368 Power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution and procedure therefore. Part 21 Temporary, Transitional and Specific Provision. 369 Temporary powers of Parliament to make laws with respect to certain matters in the state list and if they were matters in the constitutional list. Concurrent list. 370 Temporary provision with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. 371 Special provision with respect to the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat. 371A Special provision with respect to states of Nagaland. 371B Special provision with respect to the states of Assam. 371C Special provision with respect to the state of Manipur. 371D Special provision with respect to the state of Andhra Pradesh or the state of the Telangana. 371E Establishment of Central University in Andhra Pradesh. 371E, 371F, special provision with respect to the state of Sikkim. 371G, special provision with respect to the state of Mizoram. 371H, special provision with respect to the state of Arunachal Pradesh. 371I, special provision with respect to the state of Goa. 371J, special provision with respect to the state of Karnataka. 372, continuance of force of existing law and their adaptation. 372A, power of the president to adapt laws. 373, power of the president to make order for respect to the person under preventive detention in certain cases. 374, provision of as the judges of the federal court and proceedings pending in the federal court or before his majesty in council. 375, courts, authorities and offices or to continue to function subject to the provisions of the constitution. 376, provisions as the judge of the high court. 377, provisions of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. 378, provisions of the Public Service Commission. 378A, special provisions with as the duration of the Andhra Pradesh Legislative Assembly. 379, provision of the provisional parliament and the speaker of deputy and the deputy speaker therefore thereof repealed. 380, provision of the provisions as the president repealed. Council 381, council of minister of the president repealed. 382, provisions of the provision of the provisional legislature in state of part A and of the first schedule repealed. 383, provision of the governor of provinces repealed. So rest all are repealed actually, but let's say um, 392, power of the president to remove difficulties. Above few articles are repealed, so no need to focus over that. Then 392 392 is power of the president to remove difficulties. Then part 22, short title commencement, etc. 393, short titles. 394, commencement. 394A, authoritative text in the Hindi language. 395, repeals. So that's all. These were all 395 articles of Constitution of India, and I hope you have got some glance of some motivation to do your first part of revision, and we will continue. We will refine this revision part, and thank you for being throughout the video, and thank you.